Hello everyone, welcome to SplitSecond. My name is Sequeira and I will be taking you through today's match. Before starting, we at SplitSecond want to thank everyone for your constant support and suggestions on all social media. You can continue to support us by sharing and liking this video, subscribing if you haven't yet, or by becoming a patron. We'd also like to remind you guys to try and support your local game store by buying MTG products there. Help keep your store alive. Finally, while the current global situation continues, we will be providing everyone with high-quality digital gameplay rather than paper magic. This week, we're bringing you a match of 6 to 8 power decks with a special guest, Mons from cEDH TV. Mons' channel not only covers a lot of cEDH content, such as gameplay and the theory behind several aspects of cEDH, but he also backs it up with research while making the content accessible to different people. Go and check cEDH TV out. Our commanders are me with my control/infinite combats Yasova Dragonclaw, Luis with a midrange Sisay Weatherlight Captain, Mons with his own Thrasios Smasher, and Baal playing his brew for Kaalia of the Vast. It's time to look to our starting hands. Luis keeps getting to go first, and he keeps an okay hand with a Bloodstained Mire and an Overgrown Tomb for lands. He has ramp in the shape of Nature's Lore and a Carpet of Flowers. He also has an Oko, which can spell out trouble for the other commander-centric decks. Kaalia, Guardian of Thraben, gets to set everyone behind while he activates Sisay and builds his board. Mons' hand helps him set up an early Thrasios to start drawing as fast as possible. His lands are Mountain, Dwarven Mine, Scalding Tarn, Marsh Flats, and Canyon Slough. He also has an Exploration to speed things up and Chain of Vapor to interact with us if necessary. Don't forget, this is a Valakut deck, and the more mountains he has, the faster he can start pummeling us. Baal's hand is pretty nice. Wooded Foothills, Polluted Delta, and Cavern of Souls cover his colors while protecting Kaalia from counter magic. Sol Ring accelerates casting his commander. He has a Deflecting Swat for protection or interaction, while the Imperial Seal could get him any creature he wants to cheat in, like a Master of Cruelties to one-shot one of us, or an Avacyn Angel of Hope to protect his lands as he casts the last spell in his hand, Armageddon. I kept a pretty straightforward hand. Forest, City of Brass, and Misty Rainforest cover my color base. Llanowar Elves allows me for a turn 2 Mana Gorget Hydra, ready to punch everyone down. I could go for Yasova as well if I find a sack outlet to get rid of my opponent's creatures. Sword of Feast and Famine and Aggravated Assault give me infinite combat steps if I find enough lands or dorks to accomplish this. Let's get this show on the road. Luis goes first, as has become tradition, and plays a Bayou and a Carpet of Flowers. Mons plays a Marsh Flats and cracks it for a Bayou of his own, tapping it to cast an Exploration. He plays a Scalding Tarn as his second land for turn. Then he passes. Baal plays a Wooded Foothills, searching for a Plateau. He then taps it for a Sol Ring, setting himself ahead, and passes. I play a Forest and cast Llanowar Elves. I pass my turn, and Luis complains that he's the only one who didn't get to ramp. On his turn, Luis's Carpet of Flowers unfortunately does not produce any mana. He plays a Wooded Foothills, sacrificing it for a Volcanic Island, and casts Nature's Lore, finding a tapped Temple Garden. On his end step, Mons sacrifices his fetch to get a Ketria Triome into play. On his turn, Mons plays a Mountain and a Smoldering March, which enters the battlefield tapped. He casts Thrasios, ready to start drawing some cards, and passes. Baal plays a Polluted Delta, then he taps Sol Ring for a Scroll Rack and sacrifices it Polluted Delta for a Scrubland. He casts Imperial Seal, searching for an Avacyn Angel of Hope and looking for the sweet Armageddon payoff. He ends his turn by casting a Deafening Silence. I play a City of Brass as land for my turn, and although a bit sad that everyone has already played a bunch of spells, I cast my Mana Gorget Hydra, making some ominous comment about how this creature could eventually win the game on its own. I pass the turn. Although he had to wait a turn cycle, Luis's Carpet of Flowers is starting to generate mana. He produces 1 blue mana and casts his commander, Sisay Weatherlight Captain. This triggers Mana Gorget Hydra. Luis then plays a Bloodstained Mire and fetches for a Plateau, feeling that in this spot there doesn't appear to be the threat of a Blood Moon or a Back to Basics. He follows it up with a Kaalia, Guardian of Thraben, triggering the Hydra once again and increasing Sisay's power and toughness by 1. He passes the turn. Mons plays a Dwarven Mine as his first land for turn. He has more than 3 mountains, so he gets to create a 1/1 dwarf. He then cycles a Canyon Slough. Finally, he finds and plays a Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. Suddenly, his land base starts looking really threatening to us. He enchants his bio with an Utopia Sprawl, triggering the Hydra and naming Blue before passing the turn. Baal plays a Cavern of Souls naming Human. Then, he casts an uncounterable Kaalia, triggering the Hydra. He uses the one floating colorless mana to activate Scroll Rack, drawing a card and putting one back. He passes the turn. On my turn, I play a Misty Rainforest and cast Yasova Dragonclaw. This also makes my Mana Gorger Hydra grow. I attack Mons with the Hydra just because he is the one whose game plan is most advanced, and then I pass. Luis generates 1 blue mana from Carpet of Flowers. He has enough mana and all 5 colors to activate Sisay. He thinks for a bit and decides instead to pay 4 mana to cast his Oko Thief of Crowns. This triggers the Mana Gorger Hydra. He then uses Oko to turn Kaalia into a 3/3 Elk. He did this because Baal played a tutor last turn, so Kaalia's ability now has the potential to massively swing the board in his favor. He also discussed with me what Baal could have gotten, and I actually mentioned Avacyn as a potential target. Luis plays a tapped Watery Grave and passes. Mons pulls a classic Thrasios play by drawing and passing. He needs 1 more mountain before Valakut can start triggering. On his end step, I crack my Misty Rainforest, getting my own Ketre Triome before Baal untaps to play around Aven Mind Sensor. On his turn, Baal activates Scroll Rack for 2 cards. This is probably to play around the fact that Kaalia is no longer online. He plays Mox Diamond with the mana floating from Sol Ring, pitching a Mana Confluence. I actually forget the Mana Gorger trigger before Baal passes to me. On my turn, I play an Ancient Tomb and proceed to go to combat. I pay for Yasova's trigger and steal Luis's Thalia. I attack Baal with Thalia and Oko with Hydra, letting Brandão decide if he wants to sacrifice Sisay to save him. Luis declares no blockers though. Baal decides to kill the Thalia with his Kaalia. On my second main phase, I play a Sword of Feast and Famine and Mana Gorger Hydra gets a counter. I pass my turn. Luis generates 1 white mana from Carpet of Flowers and casts Shalai Voice of Plenty. This triggers the Hydra. Then he plays Overgrown Tomb, shocking himself for a Feyburrow Elder, triggering the Hydra again. On his end step, Mons activates Thrasios and reveals a mountain from the top. The Valakut menace begins. Mons taps, draws, and casts an Urza's Bauble. Mana Gorger Hydra gets a counter. He doesn't have a mountain to play, but his Thrasios activations now have a chance to deal 3 damage. He passes. Baal untaps, draws, and passes as well, without many excellent plays to get to. On my turn, I play a Firely Islet and equip Sword of Feast and Famine onto Yasova. I go to combat, pay for Yasova's trigger, and steal Shalai from Luis. I attack Mons with my huge Hydra, Baal with Yasova, and Luis with Shalai. Before blockers though, Baal flashes in an Archangel Avacyn. Mana Gorger Hydra gets a counter. When it enters the battlefield, all of Baal's creatures become indestructible. He blocks Yasova with Avacyn and Yasova dies, so this was Baal's plan. On my second main, I equip my sword into the elf, and I pass. On my end step, Mons casts a Chain of Vapor, triggering the Hydra and targeting Shalai. Originally, Mons was thinking about Chain of Vapor as a way to take out the Hydra, but now he's trying to force me to bounce something like the Feyburrow Elder, afraid that Luis could win the next turn. I don't copy it though, mostly because Mons has the means with Valakut and Thrasios to deal with Sisay himself. Luis also ends up telling us that he brought a watered down list without their heavy combo lines. Mons also cracks his bubble to look at Luis's top card of his library. He says it's a good card. Luis is now back to generating 1 blue mana from Carpet of Flowers. He plays an exotic Archard and casts Shalai, triggering the Hydra. Mon responds by activating Thrasios. He reveals a Blood Crypt, dealing 3 damage to Sisay. These control lines Mons has are really scary. Luis has nothing great to tutor for in response, so he is forced to let Sisay die. Shalai resolves, and Luis pays 5 mana to recast Sisay. Mana Gorger Hydra gets another counter and it's starting to look really menacing. Luis then passes. On his hand step, Mons casts Natural State on my Sword of Feast and Famine, triggering my Hydra. On his turn, Mons starts by playing Shelter Thicket. Valakut triggers and I take 3 damage to the face. This is because I'm getting really menacing towards Mons' board. He then casts a Vial Smasher the Fierce, triggering the Hydra, and then Elvish Mystic, also triggering my Hydra and passing. Baal activates Scroll Rack, drawing 2 and putting 2 on top of his library. He plays the Plains, and then he sends his Furious Angel at my face as well. I'm starting to feel really popular. On my turn, I play Gemstone Caverns and an Aggravated Assault. Mons responds by activating Thrasios and floating 1 blue mana. He actually manages to reveal a Taiga and kills my elf with Valakut, so I wouldn't have mana to activate the assault. I float green mana with him and decide to cast Yasova instead, triggering the Hydra. I attack Mons, and he chumps with Vial Smasher and his dwarf, going down to a whopping 4 life. He lives, for now. I pass the turn. Luis generates 1 blue mana from the Carpet of Flowers yet again. He sure likes that color. He activates Sisay, searching for a legendary card with CMC less than 3. He gets a Jace Rin's Prodigy. This gets Sisay and the Elder to 3 power. He goes to combat and swings with Shalai at Mons. He has absolutely no reason to let Mons and me control what he does, so I might as well make sure that Mons is really low. Luis activates Sisay again, this time looking for a legend with less than 4 converted mana cost. He finds a Gideon of the Trials, which he uses to prevent combat damage from the Hydra. Of course, he would be afraid that I would decide to take him down. Protected and ready to start getting some real value, Luis passes the turn. Mons plays a Mystic Remora, triggering my Mana Gorger Hydra. He then passes. On his turn, Baal pays 5 to cast a Doom Whisperer. Mana Gorger Hydra gets even bigger. Baal pays 2 life to surveil with a demon and reorders the top 2 cards of his library. He then goes to combat and sends Avacyn and the Kaalia Elk to Luis, feeling that Mons is low enough that Baal could take him out anytime he wanted to. Luis takes the damage. On my turn, I go to combat and use Yasova to steal Shalai. I attack Gideon with Shalai and Yasova. On my second main phase, I cast a Food Chain. Mana Gorger gets a counter and Mons draws a card from Mystic Remora. People on the table are a bit surprised about the Food Chain, but not so much when I decide to exile Shalai before passing. So much for Luis's protection. Luis once again generates 1 blue mana from Carpet of Flowers. Then he uses Jace to loot, pitching a Chromatic Lantern. Jace flips, although Luis doesn't have anything great to flashback at this point. He then casts Gilded Drake, triggering my Hydra. In response to the Drake's ETB, Mons makes a deal with me. Basically, he asks me not to kill him and, in exchange, he will kill the Drake. I tell him that I think that Luis is a bigger menace right now, so we are at an agreement. Mons activates Thrasios, finding a training grounds. That's going to be really strong with his commander if it enters the battlefield. He activates his commander again, scries to the bottom, and reveals a mountain off the top, putting it into play. He bolts the Drake, stopping Luis from gaining control of my Hydra. Resignated, Luis pluses Jace on Yasova, shrinking her potential of stealing creatures. He activates Sisay to get Blackblade Reforged and equipping it onto his commander. He passes the turn, and Mons decides to cast Nature's Claim on his own Remora just to gain 4 life. Mana Gorger Hydra gets a counter. Surprisingly, Baal decides to respond with a deflecting swat, redirecting the spell onto my aggravated assault. Mons, however, is not very happy about remaining at 1 HP. However, he still gets to draw a card from the Remora. On his turn, Mons pays for Remora on his upkeep. Then he casts his Training Grounds, triggering my Hydra and passing. Baal activates the Scroll Rack, drawing 1 and putting 1 back. Baal draws and activates Doom Whisperer. He finally found his desired land to hardcast Avacyn Angel of Hope, so he activates Scroll Rack and swaps 1 card for it, plays Homeward Path, and passes without attacking. On my turn, I shock myself for a Breeding Pool and cast Bear Umbra on my Hydra. It gets a counter, and Mons gets to draw from the Remora. I sacrifice Fiery Islet to draw a card. This is because I have been looking for a creature almost since the game started. I go to combat and swing with my Hydra at Luis, who is forced to block with Sisay. The Umbra triggers, and I untap all my lands before going to my end step. Baal decides to cast Swords to Plowshares on my Hydra, triggering it and the Remora. This was an excellent play. Not only did it save Baal from the Hydra eventually, but it also forced Luis to get rid of his own Sisay and put him really behind. I gain a lot of life. On his main phase, Luis does what? Exactly, he generates 2 blue mana from Carpet of Flowers, before playing an Arid Mesa and cracking it for a basic Plains. He casts Sisay for 7 mana. He equips Blackblade to Sisay and swings with Feyburrow Elder at Mons. Mons activates Thrasios, scries to the top, and reveals a mountain from the top, putting it into play. Luis takes 3 damage. Mons activates Thrasios again, scrying to the bottom and revealing a Steam Vents, putting it into play. With that, Luis dives to Valakut's Molten Pinnacle Lightning Bolting. He hasn't played much of Modern, but now Luis got a taste of what it feels like. Before his turn, Mons activates Thrasios 3 more times, and in the process he misclicks and drags the top card of his library to play. This is a mountain. None of us actually noticed this mistake because Mons' board state was already pretty big. It's also a common bug on cockatrice regarding mouse clicks. This gave Mons another land, but he still had mana for each activation regardless. He deals 6 damage to Baal. On his upkeep, Mons lets the Remora sink. No more feeding the fish. He then proceeds to activate Thrasios multiple times. The first time he scries to the bottom, revealing a wild growth. For 2 consecutive times, he scries to the top and reveals mountains, bolting Baal. After those 2, he scries to the bottom and reveals an Inquisition of Kozilek. After that one, he uses Thrasios to scry to the bottom, revealing a Cinder Glade and bolting Baal. At this point, Mons realizes he must deal with the creatures coming his way, but even killing Kaalia would trigger Avacyn to flip and take him out with her trigger. So, he plays a basic mountain, bolting Avacyn. He then plays a second basic mountain and kills the Archangel. He plays his only non-creature spell for turn, which is a Sol Ring. Then, Mons passes, and we are starting to realize that maybe we should have dealt with Mons earlier in the game. On his turn, Baal taps out to cast an Avacyn Angel of Hope. This way, maybe he can protect his board from Mons' Valakut and take him out. Mons responds by activating Thrasios. Mons scries to the top and reveals a mountain, dealing 3 damage to Doom Whisperer. The second time he scries to the bottom, revealing a Slaughter Pact. The third time, he also scries to the bottom, revealing a Mystical Tutor. He activates the fourth time, he scries to the bottom again and reveals an Underground Sea. We're all starting to think that maybe Mons will not make it. Mons activates Thrasios again, scrying to the bottom, and reveals a Crop Rotation. He casts Crop Rotation, sacrificing a basic mountain to find Stomping Grounds. Valakut triggers, and Mons deals the killing blow on Doom Whisperer. Baal responds by paying 2 life to Surveil 2. He bins the Scalding Tarn, and Doom Whisperer dies. Baal goes to combat and swills Kaalia Elk at Mons. He chumps with his elf. Finally, it's my turn. On my upkeep, Mons Slaughter Pacts my Yasova though. I shock myself for Stomping Grounds and cast a Sol Ring. Then I recast my commander, hoping that Mons has to deal with Baal and that he does not find mountains to stop Yasova from taking him out. Mons untaps and pays for his pact trigger. He activates Thrasios, scries to the bottom, revealing Demonic Tutor. He casts Demonic Tutor and gets a Vesuva, which gets him a second Valakut. Things aren't looking very nice now. Mons activates Thrasios, scrying to the bottom and revealing a Life from the Loam. He does it again, scrying to the bottom and revealing another mountain, putting it into play and dealing 6 damage directly to Baal's face. Mons repeats this process. He scries to the bottom and reveals the Badlands, dealing 6 damage to Baal. Then, he plays his second land for turn, a mountain, dealing the killing blow on Baal and on my Yasova. Valakut claims the second life. Mons keeps this up now that there's no longer a Deafening Silence in play. He scries to the bottom, reveals a Bloodstained Mire and it enters the battlefield tapped. He reveals another mountain which enters the battlefield tapped. Valakut deals 6 damage directly to my face. Finally, he casts Vial Smasher. Then he casts an Inquisition of Kozilek, revealing my last 2 cards in hand, a Sundial of the Infinite and a Survival of the Fittest, which I kept from a long time but never drew a creature to make use of it, thinking Inferno Titan or Emrakul really. Mons makes me discard the Survival and then casts his Life from the Loam. He uses it to return Mountain, Canyon Slow, and Scalding Tarn. He casts Wild Growth, targeting Steam Vents, and finally passes the turn. On my turn, the deck decides to mock me by giving me an Occam Adversary. I cast the Sundial and the Adversary. On my end step, Mons activates Thrasios, bottoms a card, and reveals a Flusterstorm. Although I'm doubting that Mons can get enough mountains to kill me, we start his turn by him playing 2 mountains and dealing 12 damage to my face. He then decides to kill me in the most epic way possible. He plays a Chalice of the Void for 34, triggering Vial Smasher and dealing 34 damage to me. What a great way to end the game. Thanks for following us through this match, everyone. This might be one of the most unique decks and unique wins we've ever had at our table, and we are very happy we got to feature Mons in this video, showing us the breadth of decks possible in EDH. Mons is now the 3rd guest who gets to win at the SplitSecond table. Congratulations! We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons and especially Izanagi, Carneiro, Troy, Stefan, TJ Rapp, Mike Purr, Ajimo, and Eagle, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, or becoming a patron yourself. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Come again next week for a new set of commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then.